The question isn't, are the Steelers a good team, or are the Steelers a very good team or a contender? They're obviously a contender. They check every box. They're 10-3. They're atop the division. They're second in the conference. They've got good wins within those 10 wins. They've taken down some quality opponents. The question, I think, that's still fair to pose is, how are they getting there? And not even necessarily in a cynical way. Good afternoon to you. Good Monday afternoon. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. Welcome to the new Double Shot Show. The Steelers beat the Browns yesterday 27-14, and they did it pretty much following the same pattern that's been applied throughout. Because the opponent really doesn't count. Have you noticed that? Not because of the whole Mike Tomlin plays up or plays down or any of that other nonsense that I don't even believe in. It's about how they get things done. It's that they don't have any phase of their football team that's dominant other than arguably special teams. But special teams aren't on the field often enough to be a dominant phase, meaning over the course of the entire game. The offense doesn't ever really steamroller anybody, whether George Pickens is there or not. The defense, it has its games where you look at the numbers afterward and you go, wow, that was fantastic. But then you'll also remember there would have been one or two drives where the other guys just inexplicably gashed them. You know what I'm talking about. So none of that ever feels complete. The only part that feels complete, I think, is that when this team needs a play from somebody, they have any number of guys to execute that play. Believe it or not, I'm not just talking about splash here. I'm not just talking about Nick Herbig swatting the ball out of Joe Burrow's hand. I mean, here, got a good one for you. Landon Roberts, yesterday, 4th and 1. Steelers are up 20-7, and the Browns have the 4th and 1 at around midfield. They get the ball to Jerome Ford. He runs off to the side, and Landon just goes rocketing through there. Makes the TFL, takes him down from, was that a 4-yard loss or a 5-yard loss? Kevin Stefanski, the Browns coach, was asked about it afterward, and he came back with some kind of borderline sarcastic response, as to what the play was supposed to be. He said, well, it wasn't supposed to be a 5-yard loss. The reason that it was a 5-yard loss is that the Steelers have a guy in Landon that Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin trust to just rifle through and make those kinds of stops. It's his specialty. It's who he is. He takes pride in it. And it became a pretty significant stop for the Steelers. I asked our friend Landon about that yesterday after the game, and as you'll hear, gave him at least a little bit of grief for pretending to not know what I was asking about. Walk me through the big play there.
It was just, you talking about 4th and 1? Yeah.
No, all the other big 5-yard tackles for losses you had.
No, it was just, last year when we played down in Cleveland, they kind of did something to that extent with Ford in the game. So it was just a good anticipation play. But, everybody on the defense was kind of locked into it. I was just the guy that, to be able to make the play for my team and stuff like that. But, yeah.
Best part of that whole thing is Tyler Matakevich sitting at the next stall. Dirty Red's just cackling up a storm whenever Landon's going, oh, you mean the 4th and 1? No, yeah, the other ones, all the other ones too. They're into that. And they're into patting each other on the back when a teammate pulls it off. If you look at the celebration, the smiles on the faces of the people who were chasing Ben Skoranek down the field after the fumble recovery or the muffed punt, it's a great scene. It's a great environment in which to play football. They'll tell you this. It's a great culture that's been established, and it's the single most consistent thing about this team. No, they don't come through every single time. Nobody does. But if you go back over the Steelers' 10 wins, what you're going to find more than anything else, more than any other commonality is that they've gotten the plays when they've needed them. Look at the offense yesterday. Didn't really get a whole lot done, did it? About $140 on the ground, $120 through the air. But when Russell Wilson needed a touchdown, he goes to Pat Freiermuth up the middle. Perfect ball, by the way. Just absolutely perfect, threading the needle. A perfect route by Muth. Real good extra effort to get into the end zone. That made all the difference. Do you know how much work it would have been for this offense to go those final 21 yards? Yeah, they probably wouldn't have gotten there. But they've gotten the big plays when they've needed them. They've gotten them on offense in a timely way. They've gotten them on defense in exceptionally timely ways, especially as it relates to TJ Watt. I don't know if that's sustainable. I'm not that smart. I don't know that anyone is. But I know that it's working to date, and it has, by itself, whether it's real or not, fostered a confidence in these guys that's very real. When we come back, going to be joined by Chris Halleck.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Joined now by Chris Halleck. And Chris, far be it from us to get, negative after a big W over the orange helmeted guys, but this is not a complete product, is it? This is still something that's frustrating to watch, especially early on, and especially with the running game, because and they talk about it all the time, how important it is. But it doesn't really get going until the fourth quarter. And while that's nice when it happens, it doesn't feel like it's enough.
No, they definitely need to find a way to find that efficiency earlier in the game before they've beaten them up, before they've landed body blow after body blow. They talk about this 15-round fight thing all the time. It's all well and good. And it does. There is some merit to it because we have seen this offense wear defenses down and be able to win in the second half that way. But you also have to be able to just execute blocks earlier in games and average more than 3.4 yards per carry for an entire game, because that's just not going to get it done, especially if you are going to be shorthanded at the receiver position. You have to find a way. The baseline for this offense was always going to be the running game. And if they can't do that efficiently, they're eventually going to run into a defense in which it's just going to completely handcuff them, and then they're going to be in a lot of trouble.
And that could happen, of course, this weekend in Philadelphia. You look at the individual runners, it probably tells more of the story than any collective figure. Najee Harris had the early 20-yarder to his credit. It was a good run. It really was. But he finishes overall with 16 carries for 53 yards. Simple math tells you that 15 of those carries brought only 33 yards or 2 yards a pop. That's not going to cut it. Jaylen Warren, much more efficient, albeit only on 9 carries. He had 47 yards. That's a 5.2 average. Russ was used, curiously enough, for some 3rd and 1 scrambles. And then not even scrambles. I take that back. Those were designed runs. Cordero Patterson was just a disaster. 4 carries for 3 yards, including the late fumble. And looks like somebody that they're not going to be using in that role again for the foreseeable future. But what do you do? What do you do? And what's missing here? Because the Browns made a commitment to stop Najee.
They did. They completely overloaded the box. They were not going to. When Najee it was like what we saw last year. When Najee was on the field, defense is sold out. They were going to absolutely stop the run, and they knew the Steelers' tendency was to run with Najee. So maybe mix some things up when Najee's on the field. Maybe do a little bit more play action. Maybe do a little more quick hitting passing game stuff. RPOs with Najee, just to keep the defense honest. I think that's part of it. The other part of it is just executing blocks, and Najee also running better, hit the hole harder, run downhill a little bit more, and not do as much of the cutting and dancing type of stuff.
And everybody who's watching this right now is screaming about the pitch outs.
Yeah.
Mention the pitch outs.
But then again, there's also the occasional one when it hits, and those are the ones where you're like, okay, well, that's why they do them. But they definitely need to hit on more of those. They need to hit on more of on all runs. I think part of it, I think Arthur Smith is finding a good rhythm when it comes to both Najee and Jalen, especially of what type of concepts to call for those guys. I think you're seeing a little bit more of what plays to Najee's strengths. You're not seeing as much. You're still seeing some of it. You're not seeing as much outside stuff with Najee. But then with Jalen, I think you're just seeing some runs that just allows him to pick a spot, hit it, and run, because that's what Jalen does really well. And
he's good.
Yeah. He had a great game. He had a great game.
He really did. Yeah, he really did. Now, again, for context purposes, he ran 9 times and he caught 2 passes for 25 yards. But, Jalen is a guy who brings a complete package to you here. And I'm not going to get into the whole Jalen versus Najee thing or whatever. The idea here is for the team, for the offense as a whole, to become more efficient running. And as you were just suggesting, Chris, that isn't always about the running or even the run blocking. Sometimes it just is about opening things up and backing guys off the line of scrimmage. And the biggest mystery to me remains, we can talk about Pat Freiermuth's touchdown. Yeah. We can talk about that big first down that he had early in the second half. Yep. But we can also talk about that he was only targeted 3 times. All he does is catch every target. He has an unbelievable ratio for the season. And he just does not get utilized. All you have to do here, I don't want to sit here and play amateur coordinator, but throw just over all those linebackers that are up at your line of scrimmage. Get it right behind them. You'll watch, they'll back off in a hurry if you start hitting 88 regularly.
I think that I do agree. They need to find more plays in which Pat is the first read or even the second read, where he is the more primary target. But if you're looking for any optimism, last week when Russ was scrambling, he found Pat multiple times.
Yeah,
and Pat,
I know where you're going.
And Pat moved for him and found open grass. Russ saw that. We saw it again on that third down that converted the first down. Huge conversion. They end up going down and scoring a touchdown to start the second half. That helps them pull away. That's 2 games in a row now. You've seen Russ and Pat connect like that. And that's...
Oh, and they talked about it afterward as to how they connected. Yeah, it was the old Ben and Heath thing.
Yep.
Where you start feeling the other guy.
Because it just felt like for a while, anytime Russ was scrambling, George was the only one getting open. That Pickens was the only one who was able to move, find space, and Russ would find him. This gives him another guy. Now, granted, you'd like to get George Pickens back, get him healthy, so you have 2 guys out there. But that at least gives you another guy, and it's a really good guy who knows how to beat man coverage, who knows how to find the soft spots in zone coverage. This is another way to utilize Pat Freiermuth, because also, is Russ the type of guy who's going to drop back into 5-step drop and sit in the pocket 30 times a game? No.
If he is, he's going to get creamed. We've seen that pattern.
Exactly. So he's going to be a guy who's going to get outside the pocket. And the fact that Pat is getting open for him, I think Pat's going to naturally become more involved just because Russ and him are starting to get on the same page. I would like to see a little bit more design go his way too, but this is at least a good start, especially when you're hitting a really tough stretch on the schedule.
Now, I referenced Pat's proficiency in terms of targets versus receptions. I want you to hear these numbers. Yep. They're staggering. You ready?
Yep.
For the season, he's been targeted 50 times, 50. Mm-hmm. He's got 44 catches on those 50 targets, right?
Yeah.
Unbelievable already. Mm-hmm. Out of those 44 catches, 23 of them have brought first downs.
Yeah.
23 out of 44 have brought first downs. 5 of them, of course, have been touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Over the last 5 games alone, he has 18 catches on 19 targets. What are you doing?
That's
like, what are you doing?
That is as reliable as you can get. Absolutely.
Give him the ball. Send it his way, man. This isn't about worrying about his individual feelings or whatever. He's a team player. He's the ultimate team player. Okay. This is just dumb. I'm sorry. This is just dumb.
Yeah. That they need to get him more involved. Absolutely. That he needs to become more, and maybe this George Pickens injury.
No, say it. I know what you wanted to say. Go ahead and say it.
I'm actually maybe this George Pickens thing is a blessing in disguise, because maybe that is going to force the offense to become more reliant on Pat. And that way, by the time George comes back, whenever that is, whether it's Philly or whether it's whatever,
everybody's better.
Yeah.
That's it. If you start using him as if he's a true TE1 target type of guy, you never know. You might be pleasantly surprised. I mean, 18 out of 19 in the last 5 games, and yet the number that stands out of that is the 19. What are you doing just targeting him 19 times? 5 games. It's crazy. But that will help the run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about the play call in the red zone where Van Jefferson caught the touchdown. I know we're talking about Pat, but that RPO, that's what happens that's what happens when a defense completely starts selling out to stop the run. You're literally making a read. If they sell to stop the run, you go out, you try to find your first read. Russ improvised and even found Van, who wasn't his first read on that. It's a perfect play, and which Russ is savvy enough and smart enough to see that kind of stuff and be able to manipulate. It's just, it's the play call. It's the design. You get those type of stuff to start manipulating defenses to start attacking what they are doing.
It was beautiful.
And then and then you're forcing the defense to okay, well, if they keep doing this to us, we have to start kind of honoring that. And then all of a sudden things get a little bit easier up front.
The entire stadium thought that was a run. That was great stuff. When we come back, J1Q.
Safety is a habit. Gun safety and responsible storage are no different. Help prevent gun accidents, misuse, and theft. Keep firearms safe and secure when not in use. For safe storage options, visit projectchildsafe.org.
Time now for today's J1Q, and for that we go to Zach Wiles in Jackson, New Jersey.
Hey, DK, big fan of the show. Obviously, really, really big win for us. My question is, what I noticed when Russell Wilson came in comparative to Fields is that there was a lot of steadiness to the offense. You could tell the communication was really, really high, comparative to how Fields was playing. And I'm curious if you saw the same thing, and if you could explain in more detail of how much the communication really helps that offense, especially with all those young guys on the O-line. It seems as though he was able to bring them all together. Also, are we ever going to see Roman Wilson play this year?
Had to get the obligatory Roman Wilson question in. Everybody should, from now until the end of the season, maybe till the end of time, throw a Roman Wilson question in at the end of their question. There's no subject that comes up more often here, no matter how many times you tell everybody, listen, he's hurt, he's not available, he's not ready, he's not whatever. The coaching staff doesn't want to play him. The coaching staff, I don't think, wanted to play him whenever he was fine. Like 100% fine, or at least whatever passes for 100% fine, whatever. That the actual question that you brought up is obviously a multi-layered one. Russ has been in the league a decade longer than Justin has, so to an extent, it's not going to be a super fair fight in that regard. I don't know, though, that communication was the right word. I mean, Justin was communicating. Justin had those guys battling for him and everything else. And Justin was just as capable of communicating plays and everything as Russ is. The difference, I think, has been that because Russ is who he is and he's achieved what he has, that when he's on the field, he's being given a little bit more license. Justin was, because of where he is as a quarterback, and by that I specifically mean coming off of 3 years in Chicago where the top priority was to make sure that he's not turning the ball over and everything else here. Yes, he operated with, if you want to call it a leash, it would have been a leash. Arthur Smith didn't really even make much of a secret of that. Usually coordinators don't like to admit that, but he said the plays that go in are the plays that are going to get called. But with Russ, you're seeing now, RPOs like the one that resulted in Van Jefferson's touchdown yesterday. That's Russ. That's Russ saying, I don't like what I'm seeing over here, but I sure like it over there. And then Jefferson's not even his first read if he goes over there. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. And you know who recognizes that more than anybody? Players on the field. And they respond accordingly. When you talk to the players now, what you hear more than anything, Zach, whenever they get into, if you're a reporter, you exercise some common sense and you don't say, what do you think is better about Russ than Justin? You're not a jerk about it. Okay. What you can say is, what does Russ bring to this offense? Totally fair thing to ask, right? Totally professional way to ask it. And they'll give you that Russ is reading things, that he's seeing things, and that as a result, he's having all of them feel better about their own settings, knowing, hey, that guy's got me. That guy sees if there's going to be a blitz that's going to beat me. That guy sees if they're loaded up too heavily against the run. That guy is going to find a way to make a play if I just do my 1/11th of the equation. If I just execute my block, if I just run my route, if I just do this or that, he's got me. That ends up that's what I'm talking about. And the funny thing is too, Zach, this kind of swings back to what I talked about in the intro today. It's the sum of its parts. It's not a great football roster. There are a couple of great players on it, but it's not a great overall roster. It's not one that you look at and say, man, Pittsburgh, they're really loaded. They're not. And you certainly wouldn't look at this offense and think that. But if certain things can bounce off each other like atomic reactions or whatever and make it to the same goal at the end, the result's all the same, my man. The result's all the same. I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody checking out the new Double Shot Show. We'll have another one of these tomorrow.